We're going to talk about a diet today that promises that you can just slam whatever you want and binge eat and you're going to lose weight. We're going to talk about the myths. We're going to talk about the facts. We're going to talk about who it's good for. We're going to talk about intermittent fasting. We're going to bust some myths. We're going to give practical advice. We're going to give protocols. And we're going to give just some common sense, obvious things that you should know or that you may not know about the intermittent fasting. I'm Justin from Health Made Clear. I'm a nurse practitioner and I'm a fitness nerd who wants people to know more about fitness and live a healthier life. Kind of doesn't make any sense though, because the unhealthier you are, the more you come to me, the more of a job that I have. Anyway, I digress. So what is intermittent fasting? I would call it less of a diet and more of an eating protocol. So essentially you're taking a certain amount of time throughout the day that you're not eating, and there's a certain amount of time that you are eating. The most common ones we'll get to, but for the sake of argument, the most common one is 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours of eating, and for the most part, you can kind of eat whatever you want and not really have to measure your food, with a few caveats, but that's kind of the idea. The idea behind it is kind of like a hybrid car. So if you got a hybrid car and you're running on battery, well, when your battery runs out, you switch to gasoline, okay? So you can kind of think of intermittent fasting as the car and the diet that you're using as the fuel source. So as you're fasting, you're running on battery. When the battery runs out, you switch to sugar. So if you're not eating for 16 hours a day, you're burning fat because there's no sugar around, there's no glucose floating through your bloodstream for your body to burn, and then you eat some food, and then you replenish it, and then you go on. You know, you could use a lot of weight if you didn't eat at all, but then you'd die. So you do have to eat. Some people will shorten their eating window even more. That is the quick and dirty of how intermittent fasting is supposed to work. So some myths on it. Some people say, well, I don't want to be starving all the time. Like, yeah, you're going to be hungry, duh. Anytime you do any kind of a fat loss diet at all, whether you're eating every couple of hours or not, you're going to be hungry because you're not eating enough. Duh. That's how that works. If you feel full and you're full all the time, you're probably eating enough food that you're not going to lose any weight. Duh. So, other people say it's a way to starve yourself. No, because you're eating. It's kind of the opposite of starving yourself. Eating, opposite. So anyway, another one that I hear quite a bit is you lose your muscle mass. Well, I do not disagree that there will maybe be a little bit of catabolism. If you are working out regularly, you're hitting the weights hard, you're getting adequate protein in there, it will most likely be minimal. Your body isn't just something that goes on a day-by-day basis and it's like, oh man, didn't get enough food today, I'm gonna burn all this muscle that I need to use because every day my body walks into some place and gets crushed when I'm squatting. It won't work that way. For the most part, your body's good at adapting, your body's good at knowing what it needs, what it doesn't need. Now, if you don't work out for a while, undereat a bunch of protein, and you continuously do intermittent fasting for a long period of time, yeah, you'll probably lose some muscle mass. But if you do intermittent fasting, weight train regularly, 2, 3, 4 or more times a week, and it's heavy, the odds of you usually losing any appreciable muscle mass are pretty low, especially if you're getting your protein in. And there is some research coming out that we used to think that it was super important to have protein every X amount of hour, otherwise you'd lose muscle and you'd go catabolic. Now it seems that if you eat a bunch more protein, your body gets less sensitive to it over a certain period of time, and then on the opposite, if you take a bunch of breaks and then eat a bunch of protein, your body gets extra sensitive. So really, it doesn't even matter as far as, unless you're looking for optimal muscle growth, like very optimal, it's not a big of a deal if you kind of cluster your protein. The biggest thing is make sure you get it in throughout the day, you get adequate amount in. It is much more about total protein intake than it is when you eat it and how you eat it and that kind of stuff. So that's one thing to keep in mind with intermittent fasting is you're going to need to get your protein in, but doing it during a fasting window is a-okay. So who is it good for? It's good for those people who want to lose weight. The idea behind intermittent fasting is that you've shortened your eating window enough that you just can't stuff food in your mouth all the time, and that is how it creates that calorie deficit. It's good for people with busy schedules. Let's say you've got something going on and it's really hard for you to eat breakfast in the morning, or you just don't like eating in the morning. Great. Intermittent fasting will be good for you. You can skip breakfast, get your food in later. There are some people who do swear that it gives you more focus and more clarity. I generally tend to find that if you are a little bit starving, it does have a little bit of sympathetic drive, and you do think a little clearly. It's not that big of a mystery. Some people like that. Some people don't. Kind of depends on you. There are some potential health benefits to it. I am less in agreement that these benefits are directly related to fasting, and more so that if you're eating a healthy diet and you're in a calorie deficit and you're losing weight, you're going to get these health benefits. The ones that people talk about is improved insulin sensitivity. If you lose 10 pounds and you eat a normal diet, you're still going to have improved insulin sensitivity. People talk about better blood lipid profiles, more than likely because you're just not eating as much, and hopefully if you're doing intermittent fasting, you're eating higher quality foods. There's the mental clarity, and there's obviously the weight loss. And the weight loss will only work if you eat at a calorie deficit. If you normally eat 2,500 calories and you gain a pound a week on 2,500 calories, if you switch to intermittent fasting and you eat 2,500 calories, you're still going to gain a pound a week. You have to create that deficit. Intermittent fasting is just a way to manipulate your life to create that deficit inherently. So all these people who think that if you do intermittent fasting, you're just going to lose weight, no. There have been plenty of studies that have gone head to head with intermittent fasting, keto, if you fit your macros, pretty much any other diet, and it shows that when calories are equated, meaning everybody eats the same amount of calories, it makes no difference. There is nothing magic about the intermittent fasting diet. The thing that's nice about it is it may fit your lifestyle, and that's what we're going for. So who should avoid it? First off, as a healthcare provider, and I'm not your healthcare provider, you should go talk with your doctor if you're going to start any diet. Now that we got that out of the way, people who probably should avoid it are pregnant or breastfeeding women, individuals with a history of eating disorder, because this inherently is kind of an eating disorder. It's kind of like a binging type thing. So be careful with that if you have a history, if you have a problem with that. People with certain medical conditions should avoid it. Some diabetics who are having issues with their blood sugar should probably avoid it, because you will just inherently have periods of low blood sugar because you're not eating. Like, duh. So those people should avoid it. Also, on the alternative side, if you are somebody who needs a ton of calories because you're an athlete or a CrossFitter or a strongman or whatever, crunching your eating window down to 8 hours a day may not be enough time for you to get the calories that you need to perform at the level that you need. So be conscientious of that. This is not a one-size-fits-all diet. No diet is. There are drawbacks to each. That's what we're hopefully going to go over this. So the most common protocols for intermittent fasting is the 16-8, which you talked about. 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours of eating. Some people do 12 and 12. Some people do like 16 and 6. Some people will do 24 hours of fasting and have one big meal, 24 hours of fasting. Other ones that you may have heard is called the 5-2 diet or the fighter diet. That is where you eat like normal for 5 days, and then 2 non-consecutive days. Some people just straight up fast, or they have between 400 and 600 calories or so on those non-consecutive days, consisting of mostly protein. And then the 24-hour fast meal to eat is what's called the eat, stop, eat method. That's pretty common. The biggest thing with this is you just got to make sure that if you're doing the 16-8, that you make your eating window the same. What ends up happening is people have to move that eating window around, and then they're not really fasting, and they've expanded this eating window over the course of a couple of days into much larger because they're just kind of constantly eating and moving it around. They're splitting up, that kind of stuff. And that time is what meters the food. They're expending that time and they don't realize it. So just be conscientious if you're doing that. Don't make it hard on yourself. When we're doing it, we need to focus on nutrient density. So getting good amounts of protein in, 1 gram per pound of body weight, 2.7 grams per pound of body weight is a great place to start. Healthy fats, not just eating a bunch of garbage. Fiber from vegetables. Vegetables are good. And when I say vegetables, no, I don't mean French fries. I don't mean tater tots. Those do not count. That's the same thing as bread, in my opinion. What is okay during that fasting window? Do you need to shut off all water? Do you need to shut off all liquid? No, you obviously shouldn't have anything with calories in it. Some purists will say that you shouldn't have anything with artificial sweeteners. That does not seem to be the case, but you do you. Things that are okay are water, duh, black tea, coffee. The idea is no calories. Now, there are some people who get really into the idea of intermittent fasting is to decrease insulin spikes, and some people will mix like coconut oil and casein protein because it doesn't spike insulin. It's not really intermittent fasting at that point. One thing about this diet that is obnoxious that people do is they will think that they just have a excuse to eat, and then they'll just eat like trash. They'll eat like absolute garbage, Lay's chips, sugar, whatever, and then they have like an unhealthy diet and they have unhealthy diet things that come to them. They gain weight, blood cholesterol levels go up, blood sugar levels go up, they look like ass. Again, this is not a magic diet. You will have those things we talked about earlier, the insulin sensitivity changes, the blood lipid profile improvements, just from not eating like an asshole. That is a good diet. Just I'm doing the I don't eat like an asshole diet. So make sure that you're doing the right things, getting in adequate fruits and vegetables, getting in fiber, getting in enough protein. Make sure that you're getting quality foods. You're not just stuffing a bunch of junk and pizza in there, because that will cause you some problems. Another thing to touch is where to put your eating window. This is one that I see frequently. I had a lady come in and she's like, yeah, I'm doing my eating window when I'm at work. And then she's like, yeah, I'm not eating enough. Well, duh, because you have a job. Unless you have a job where your job is eating, it does not make sense to have your eating window at a time when you have to go do other things. I think what happened is she's like, well, I work for 8 hours. There's this 8-hour eating window. Cool, 8 and 8. We'll just make those things run together. If you're gonna do this, you need to make sure that it works with your life. If you are somebody who has a big chunk of 8 hours where they can get a lot of food in, maybe not all at once, maybe not continuously, but like a chunk at the beginning and a chunk at the end, great. Intermittent fasting will probably work for you. If you're somebody who doesn't have that kind of time, or you only get like a half an hour here and a half an hour there and a half an hour here, it's not gonna work for you because you can't shovel in that much food in an hour and a half, really, if you combine it all together. The point of intermittent fasting, to recap, is that it manipulates calories by decreasing or compressing the time that you have to eat. It does that by simply letting metabolic process of your body do their thing without extra food coming in, and then it burns fat as a preferred fuel source for a while because there's no extra food there. Again, it does not do anything magic. It does not switch your body into burning fat mode because you're burning body fat, because later you're gonna put food in it and that food's gonna have glucose and it's gonna have carbs and those kind of things. It does not do anything magic. The idea is to create a calorie deficit by adhering to an eating window. Most common one is 16-8. Some people do, like I said, 18-6. There are some practitioners who think that you technically aren't fasting until the food is moved out of your gut, which maybe they're only taking a 5-hour eating window. Play with that on your own. The point is that you need to create that 8-hour window. People who it's not good for are individuals with a history of eating disorders, people with certain medical conditions, especially diabetes, women who are breastfeeding or pregnant, or people, athletes, whatever, with a very high calorie need. And you're getting calories in, but you do you. So that's all I have to say on intermittent fasting. If you like this video, if it was helpful for you, if you learned something, if you need to send this to somebody who needs to learn some things, that'd be awesome. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.